is the first private case against the bank for financing terrorism. The Airbank case has got 6,000 claimants. 500 of them are U.S. citizens. Of that, 300 of them were victims of attacks perpetrated by Hamas. The judge decided that first we're going to have a trial on the Hamas-only attacks, Americans only. There was 24 attacks that we believe were perpetrated by Hamas. We didn't have to prove to the jury that Airbank was funding Hamas. We had to prove that Airbank funded 24 separate attacks by Hamas, and then we had to prove that they did it knowingly or intentionally. And the jury was instructed on each one of these points that they had to give a decision on whether we proved all of that. Now, how do you prove that someone does something knowingly? I mean, intentionally is even harder, but how would you prove that they knew that by transferring money for a certain charity that this was going to pay the specific terrorist attack? The particular victims that we deal with are those who are victims of international crime, such as genocide, terrorism, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, torture, human trafficking, slavery. One of the things that I see over and over from hundreds and hundreds of the clients, until there's some kind of recognition that someone has to pay for what was done. I don't mean money, but someone has to be held accountable. There's this hole in their soul that they haven't been recognized. They haven't been counted. No one's acknowledged. But when there's that acknowledgement, they can move to a different space. My background was international tax, so I understood everything of how money moves internationally through tax havens, through bank secrecy laws in legitimate ways. And I also knew how criminals use those same networks. I had a unique perspective because the lawyers who had dealt with it prior to that didn't have my background. I just viewed it all as a business. You have corporate culture, recruitment, supplies, product, and you have finance. It's a bloody business, but it's a kind of business. And because their finance needs to be clandestine, I understood that they move money just like other criminals through tax havens, which is extremely difficult to try to trace. I'm going to be in Congress on the 23rd and 4th. Those people who provide services and financing to them sometimes are in it for ideology, but sometimes are not. They're just in it for the profit. For instance, banks laundering money for terrorists. We partner up with other law firms, and we go after the profiteers or the financiers, and we try to link them to the damage that was caused by the support they gave to the criminals. There's resolutions by the General Assembly of the United Nations, one after the other, that victims have rights. Rights is this idea that you have a right, but the truth is that your rights aren't granted to you. Your rights have to be fought for. The jury's out for almost 3 days. They come back every so often, ask questions. The judge keeps calling us back. So of course we're nervous. Maybe the jury will rule on there's 24 attacks, maybe 16 yes, 8 no. And I'm thinking, man, if I have one client yes and one client no, how devastating, that's gonna be. The judge calls us back and we think it's gonna be more questions. No, the jury's got a decision. One by one. On the attack on April so-and-so at the Dolphinarium, which is across the street here, the jury says, yes, Airbank is liable. On the attack at Cafe Moment in Jerusalem, yes. And as he's going through the list, one by one by one, I'm starting to cry. I'm just so choked up. It was really overwhelming. And the jury came back with 24 yeses on every attack. That was overwhelming. There's really no one else that does exactly the way I've set things up. And there's only a handful of lawyers in the world that are really doing the kind of things that we do in general. I didn't understand how difficult this would be when I started. I didn't understand how long it would take or how expensive it would be. You know, so there's so many people that need help, but I go to where it looks like there's a crime that's been perpetrated, but there's many more crimes than I can possibly deal with. I think the fear and concern is that we may not succeed for them, that's all. I don't want to disappoint them. They've already been crushed. I've always had that kind of ornery personality to want to fight people. But that's not heroic. That's my job. If I can move the law forward 1 inch, and if I can get justice and compensation for my victims, mission accomplished.